The nation is under siege. The nation is under siege.
And good evening again from Bridge, New Jersey. It's Sunday night, and that means it's Divided We Stand. If you're unfamiliar with this channel, you can find us on Facebook. You can also find us on YouTube. We are not monetized, so we're not looking for anything except your commiseration, your support, and perhaps your ideas so that we can get ourselves out of this funk that seems to be all over the country right now if you're on the right side of history. So again, we ask that you become a member of our Facebook group page. It's quite popular. It's a private group, but if you request to become a member, we'll gladly accept you. And if you are on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. It's not a big channel, but it serves its purpose, and we do have an interactive show. And we hope that those of you who are here tonight will interact, because this is one thing that Dave and I have always tried to do, is try to make sure that you were the show, because if it's just us blabbing, there's really no sense. Yes, indeed. So without any further ado, I'd like to say we have a special guest tonight. That would be Paul McGinley, my good friend Paul McGinley from Toledo, Ohio. And of course, we're going to have Dave from Arlington, Virginia. We may have Ryan Velez. He generally joins us, or at least has of late, on Sunday evenings. We'll see what happens. I sent him a link, and we'll see what happens there. So without any further ado, again, my good friends, David Price and Paul McGinley. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Okay.
How you doing, Brian?
All right. I think I'm okay.
Yeah, Brian, you were indicating there kind of a down kind of thing. I think a lot of it has to do with your music selection. I think if you replace Holdsworth at the beginning of the show,
Green Day.
Green Day's better than Holdsworth. And then what you were just playing there, that sounded like what you're just playing now sounds like kind of an internal gastronomic distress
Well, that's the effect
call.
we want. We want somebody not to even notice the music. It's just kind of like a bubbling.
Well, Brian, they're so bad. The songs that you select, of course they're going to do it.
Okay.
You know.
All right.
I mean, you've gone through.
My biggest fan here.
Where's Taylor Swift?
Taylor Swift. Yeah. When's the last time you listened to a Taylor Swift album, Dave?
He's watching Kelsey play football today.
Oh, that's right. We're going to miss him
that-
for a bit. At least until, 9 o'clock? We'll probably miss half an hour of that game. So, yeah, the Eagles. It looks like...
Hey, can I start off with a question?
Absolutely.
Always, Paul.
Okay, guys. So, as you both likely know, I don't own a TV. I haven't had a TV for close to 10 years. So, what's the latest? What are they saying about Trump's plans, short-term plans or immediate plans, either through cabinet election nominations or through policy? What are you guys hearing?
Dave, why don't you start with that? You seem to be living in Washington.
Well, okay, so it would be hard to find a worse cabinet than Trump is assembling. It's almost as if, here's a surprise, he wants to bring the country to its knees because in that sense, the rich get even richer, and I think that's part of his plan. Now, I'm not going to be down. I went through my period of being down, so as I look at it now, I'm looking for little victories that'll keep us going. We're not going to get a big victory until 4 years, but there's also a good chance if we work hard, we can put a barrier up in 2 years if we can change the House. And it's so close that, it could. And if Trump is taking the country in the wrong way, which I think he will be, it may be easy to do. So some people just say, so what? I think it was kind of a big deal that Trump put up Matt Gaetz I thought it was a very stupid selection, unless he was trying to establish his power very early. From what I understand, I don't have any inside sources anymore, but from what I understand, Matt Gaetz and Ted Cruz run neck and neck for the two most disliked officials in Washington, and it looks like Gaetz has kind of pushed Cruz so far behind or forged so far ahead. Now, again, people will look at this and they're saying, well, it's not much. He'll get another position in the Trump cabinet where he doesn't have to be confirmed by the Senate, and that may well be true. But the thing is, think about it, in Trump's, what was that, his third appointment, right? I think third cabinet, second or third. He didn't get what he wanted, if indeed that's what he wanted. And I think we have to look at those ways. So we can't say he's going to get everything he wants. And this week, too, in the news, you're seeing more and more that now the shock and all is over. People say he can't do what he wants to do. He can't stop. He can't close the Department of Education unless the Senate and the Congress were to change the law, because that department was created by Congress and only Congress can abolish it. We know, too, another thing we know from this week, with no surprise, he denied any involvement. I don't even know what Project 25 is. And he takes the main person and gives him a cabinet post. Brian, I'm going to turn it to you for a minute, because I really haven't done too much with this new choice. I know a little bit about her. Didn't you put something on the page? You seem to be fascinated with her and thought she was such a great
Pam
choice.
Bondi? You're talking about her? Well,
Yeah.
first of all, she's a very aggressive attorney, and she is one of the attorneys who promoted the idea that the election was stolen in 2020. So that's a problem already there. So she is her female version of Roy Cohn. It seems like the money positions might be a little more traditional, and that gives us some hope. And remember, he can't get rid of Jerome Powell. I mean, he might try to do it. So in terms of economics, it would certainly be absurd of him to put, just anybody willy-nilly in those type of positions, and he doesn't seem like he has. So, yes, Ryan, if you can hear me, you can come on now. Ryan just texted. So,
Okay. So, Paul, what I address first is like the top, but here in Washington, D.C., that's not the main concern. I joke about it, a few standard jokes, but Jeff Bezos has his headquarters 4 blocks from where I live. It's all over, but I mean, the main one is there. And something he's established, apparently did it in Seattle, and he's doing it here. He gives away, well, he doesn't, but they give away free bananas every day. They have 2 banana stands, one right down the street from me and one at the actual headquarters. And it's taken on a life of its own, if you will. People come there, they stop if they have a few minutes, they talk. So I spent some time down there. And I was talking to, what did he say? He had 31 years in the federal government. And he said everyone in his office is worried about, will they have a job? So, for me, it doesn't affect me one way or the other in terms of, the pocketbook. I mean, it does what he does, but I'm saying, but you've got people here who are they're terrified. They've got their house, or they're living in the school district where they want their children to go. And so, one of the things I think you see here that you maybe don't see other places is you see the human cost of just the uncertainty. And that's where we are right now. We're in a very uncertain period. I don't know if you saw online, Brian or Ryan or Paul, there is a conspiracy theory making on the left, we knew we'd have to have one, that Kamala did not lose the election, that Elon Musk, through Starlink, pulled the strings, and that is completely false. So I hope many of our people, and by our people, I mean anybody who opposes Trump, doesn't fall for that. I mean, that's their side. Let them do that.
welcome, Ryan. It's good to see you.
Welcome, Ryan.
Right, and just remember, you're always welcome to come on. Anybody here is welcome to come on, at 8 o'clock. Any insights you want to give us, Ryan, for your feelings during the week? You feel any better or any worse about what happened?
I definitely don't feel any better. I think people I mean, the people I've been speaking to, I mean, everybody is extremely uncertain, like Dave was saying when I first came on. And like pretty much everybody that I see and speak to about it, they don't know what to do. They don't know. They just don't know much. They feel, but we all have one thing in common, and that's that we feel the future is fairly bleak at this point. And it's horrible to think of it that way. But I mean, we're looking at mass deportations. We're looking at mass job losses. We're looking at people who, are going to leave the country voluntarily to avoid the deportations, and then we're going to see prices rise. I mean, the whole concept of, blanket tariffs on everything is just, I mean, you can look at Argentina. That's happening in Argentina right now, and they have a 50% poverty rate. So, like, I don't understand why anybody would think that we're going to have the same thing here, or not have the same thing here, I should say. So, like, yeah, I saw this video. It was an excellent video. It was an African-American guy basically said, prices are up. Housing is unaffordable. Young people can't get jobs and or afford houses. Like, all of this is wrong, and no one's talking about it in a serious way. Like, I know for me, and I know this is going to sound really strange, but one of the weirdest things for me is watching TV commercials, because they're just persisting and they keep filming them and they're wanting us to spend money, and it's like everything is normal and the same.
Right, have very Pollyanna effect when you watch it. Everything's kind of happy, and you would think that everything's going well.
It's completely bogus. It's right. Like, no, this is not okay. Like, things are very wrong, and we're going to have a lot of struggles in the near future, and everyone's going to have to handle them. The one thing that I do know that's positive, I don't want to like just be all doom and gloom. One thing that I do know that's positive is there are a lot of people online talking about you need to connect with your community, and you're going to need to support people within your community. And I think that is realistically the only thing that we can do in the meantime, like in the immediate future, is, reach. Like, I have a lot of people who've reached out to me who I haven't heard from in years. My first question to them is, did you support Trump? And if they say no, then they can remain in my life, and I can, connect with them and support them in the ways that I can, and vice versa. Everyone else who's a Trump supporter, I have disconnected from them permanently. I don't want to spend my time, energy, or resources arguing with them, talking with them, helping them, nothing. They're just out of my life, because this election is not the same as every election before it. It is not the same.
That's where I differ with Bill Maher, because he was saying last night that he thought it was absurd that we won't talk with Republicans, that the idea that, we break off communication, which I think essentially, even though he didn't say it outright, that he was agreeing with what Joe Scarborough did, and so did Mika. But I think that this is the reason why we created Divide We Stand, because negotiation is untenable, and that's what we said right from the beginning, that this is why we created this channel. We cannot negotiate with them, and why would you want to negotiate with the fascists anyway? I mean, just to be able to say that so why even deal with family? I think it's just a proper move.
I have to laugh. And, statistics they used to say, statistics weren't always true. Well, now they're probably never true. But I think I saw today something like Scarborough's ratings are down 38% after he met and Mika met with Trump. Well, I think a lot of people what should I say this? I kind of know journalists a little bit, because I was one, and I've been, following, and I worked at the museum, and yada, yada, yada. But journalists need access to sources, and the president is the ultimate source. Now, if I were running the Washington Post, say, for example, I'd send my youngest kids there, because you're not going to get anything out of them anyway. You can't believe them. But, so it was like this olive branch, and Bill Maher doing the same thing. They're saying, look, Donald Trump did more than win an election, gentlemen. Donald Trump won the culture battle right now. What do I mean by that? In 5 different sports, athletes, when they make a good play, when they score a touchdown, when they do something, are doing the Trump dance.
That's disgusting. I saw
If
that.
you don't believe me, and go just Google it, or go to any place, and they're doing that. And Trump. Look, Ryan, I agree with you. I mean, it's just horrifying to even know people who voted for him or think about it. But as I say, I think and he's got a couple groups that he's got behind him now. He's got angry white men. He's got rich white men. And if you have rich white men, you got money, right? And if you have angry white men, you have a mob you can manipulate. That's a dangerous combination. The women are somewhere else. I've seen some things. The women let us down. The women, bullshit. Bullshit. I don't want to analyze it anymore, but I think Joe
he did
Biden,
win the female vote, the female white vote, and he did win win the male white vote. Yes.
Right. Well, yeah, but well, now you get an opposite reaction. I've been seeing some inklings, and it could just be sour grapes for the moment, or that black women said we're done. We can't do this anymore. Our men deserted us. Now,
Well,
and
I'm going to interrupt you, Dave, because
Sure.
One thing that did come up on the Bill Maher show was that with I forget her name, but anyway, it was 84% of African Americans voted for Trump, 79% of Jews voted. 84% of African Americans voted for Harris, 79% of
right.
Jews voted for Harris. But when we came to the white Christian population demographic, just the white Christians, head over heels for Trump.
I'd
What
love to
about
hear.
white
Here is the
women?
irony.
Brian, what about white women? Did they, by majority? vote
Yes,
for-
the majority went for Trump, white women.
So the abortion
A
issue,
slight, but yes.
they actually went with his side on the abortion issue. They fell
Yes.
for the line about late-term abortions and all this bullshit,
And-
right?
Right,
I thought
absolutely.
Kamala never really.
There may be. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
There may be another factor in play. This is kind of reaching, but I'm wondering about this. Okay, so Melania, who is a female version of Donald Trump in certain ways, they deserve each other. When she came out with her book, which I actually have looked at. I looked at the cover. I wouldn't pick
You
it up.
didn't buy it, I hope.
I said I looked at it. I
Right,
said I
looked
looked
at
at it. I wouldn't touch it. Might have cooties, but she said, of course, she comes out for abortion, right? Now, that Donald Trump doesn't give a shit what Melania believes in, and Melania doesn't give a shit what she believes in. So I'm wondering if there could be some kind of thinking of a white woman. Well, she'll get to him and change his mind. Now that might be a little deep. I don't think that's across the board, but I think there are some people, and I do spend a lot of my time. I do spend a lot of my time listening to or on dealing with Trumpers or seeking them out, and they're just. It doesn't matter. And Brian, I know your theory is that they hate us, and I think that's part of it. I think they hate foreigners, and that's part of it. They think God is on their side, and that's part of it. They think that the economy was better because eggs were $1 cheaper, or whatever they are. Then, and I think again, and I don't want to be one of those ones that now turn on Joe Biden. I don't want to do that because he still did good. He did a solid job, but maybe somebody should have figured out that message wasn't getting out. It just wasn't getting out. Now maybe it would have had no impact. And I do think his appointment for Attorney General is one of the reasons why Donald Trump was eligible to run. You can't wait that long. You can't. I don't care to lose the damn case, but I'll never. I want to hear someday from him directly, from the AG, current AG, why. That's all. He had aggressive prosecutors going. They were ready.
Right.
So do any of the three of you have any idea at all why the AG wasn't more aggressive?
Maybe he was just afraid. I don't know.
Same
I don't
thing
know
as
what else
Yeah.
it could be.
Or maybe just underestimated. They they probably felt that the stain of these charges would prevent him from going anywhere. And boy, were we surprised about that.
Could you imagine, a thought experiment? Brian always likes to do thought experiments. Could you imagine if somehow Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or even Andrew Jackson is one of the worst presidents we ever had, or Buchanan or Nixon, or, I mean, you could take any president, and they come back and see the characteristics of the man who got elected, they would be horrified. And again, the things we need to change, guys, I don't see it happening quick enough.
Well, the thing is, he was already rejected by losing his re-election campaign to Biden. So he was already rejected by the majority of the American people, and that's why I was personally surprised at the outcome. But I don't know. I don't know if it's because the Democrats didn't show up or what. But what I'd like to know is, okay, so they have a majority in Congress.
Mm-hmm.
What do we have in the next 2 years before the off elections? What do we have to stop them? I mean, they can monkey with Social Security. They can do all kinds of stuff. Are there some apostates in the Senate and the House that might
have
go
Ukraine war? You have
plan?
from the Middle East. That could be something that could quickly turn the tide against him, because he's going to have, once he steps in, he's going to have to decide what he's going to do with Ukraine. I think we all know what he's going to do, but still, that's a sticky situation, and how he goes about that.
Well, they end up with this, permanent ceasefire, Brian, in return for, keeping a certain amount of territory.
Right,
Russia.
Exactly. That's exactly what will happen.
Isn't that a kind of victory? Won't the Bubis Americanus see that as
that's my next point, Paul. I've got to ask all three of you, because you are all prolific readers. That I can say about all of you. And Paul had mentioned me about the great essayist Gore Vidal, the book The United States, and I was reading it a couple days ago, and Vidal was talking about how in the days, for example, Jonathan Swift and other writers who use satire, their writings were not at the time very, very popular. And the reason they weren't popular was not because they weren't good. It was that the reader could not understand the satire itself. So what I'm saying is, all of you being prolific readers, is it perhaps that our culture of viewers of television, where we're talking television here rather than what we move from the text to the visual, that they just can't understand anything beyond the simplest message.
Yeah, no nuance, nothing. Yeah.
So we keep saying, how is it they do this or do that? Well, if this is the case, it's really no different than a Swift novel that's
steady erosion of education, and which he and his party have a conscious plan to continue this erosion of education.
Yeah,
that's how fascism grows, right? And becomes strong.
One of the ways.
Dumbass people,
Yeah, I was saying a little while ago, is there anybody in history that you can think of that was considered on the right side of history that supported mass book burnings?
That's actually, Brian, I'm smiling because that's a meme out there that's circulating.
Is it? I didn't know. I was just thinking.
No, I know. But what happens is, people put memes down, and they can be clever or not. But a lot of times, to me, memes are the instant example of a cliche. A cliche only loses its coding when it's said too much, right? But it's always true. I mean, most of the cliches are true. And it's the same thing with memes. So yeah, there are a lot of people looking at that.
Well, you saw Dave, you saw the ad that it was a Trump ad, and it showed Kamala Harris going through an interview saying that something to the effect that she was going to provide funding for sex changes in prisons. And then all of a sudden it flips to Trump. He says, she's for them and I'm for you. And that's the difference. And Steve Schmidt, who's very, very good journalist, he said this was an effective ad. They got right. Look, and there is a classic example. They cannot delineate, between the facts and the fiction.
Well, let's look at that for a moment, and everybody kind of going this way. What do they have that we don't have? Okay, number one, they have Donald Trump. and that's a positive for
He's a
them.
very aggressive.
No, he
Politician.
says along. He says along. I mean, he can say something and 3 minutes later deny he said it, even though the whole world heard him. I mean, he is the ultimate con man. There's no question about that. They had Mitch McConnell, who had one goal, and that was to bring the Republican right view into the mainstream. And he saw that the way to do that and push for it and finally got it was to pack the Supreme Court. And they did pack it. It's not, they packed it. It's 6-3.
It's going to be packed more.
Yeah. That's it. But the thing about reading, it was interesting. I don't have it right in front of me, but I read a statistic that kind of shocked me this week. It was that after leaving college, 64% of college graduates never read a book again. Think about that.
Job-based education, Dave.
Well, there's that.
America's become a job-based education.
Look, do you realize, Paul? I hope it happens while on air because it'd be great video. When you said you didn't have a TV for 10 years, there's probably a whole group massing coming after you because you're too dangerous. You're not the norm. I mean, think about that. I have not watched a newscast since 1976.
I'm one of the beneficiaries, Dave, of a liberal education, which doesn't exist. Trump is a cheerleader for the attitude of, why are you studying for an art degree? Why should we give you funding for that? I mean, it's just this, degradation of the arts, and so what you've bred is a dumbass country. An uneducated country. I work in a hospital, and my co-nurses, I must tell you, they're frighteningly undereducated in the arts. Frighteningly. Okay, I don't want to disparage them in any way, but that is true. Their education was all based on science and medical sciences, and becoming a nurse. It's job-based education.
And I think that's a very valid point. But I'd like to ask you guys, since we're talking about reading, Ryan, I'll start with you. Did you read out before you went to school, or did you read out on Saturdays or after school? In other words, did you read more than what was presented to you in school?
Yes. I've always been a reader. In fact, right now I write more than I read in the past year. But generally speaking, I mean, I'm always reading something. Mm-hmm. And I've read, based on your statistic, I am in the minority apparently, because I've read.
Me too, right?
In fact, my family, we do a thing called Yola Bokaflod, which is
Say again. I'm sorry, I missed the first part. What do you call it?
It's a Swedish word called Yola Bokaflod, which means book flood. So we do this every Christmas where we give each other books and read them.
I didn't know the Swedish word for it. But in Bridgeton has a sister city in Sweden called Eskilstuna, and so I was aware of the custom. It's done over there quite a bit. And what a great custom! And some of them actually read the book that night, or they'll have like a.
We've never actually successfully read a book in the night that we do this, but we have 6 people that do this within the family, and cool. It's kind of Secret Santa style, where we have a 7th person outside of the group pair up who to buy for. And then we buy 3 to 5 books, basically, for each person.
Very cool. And Paul, to you, were you a reader like from the get-go, or how did you become a reader if it wasn't from the get-go?
I pretty much started really reading around high school, but it really took off in college, as Brian can attest.
Yes, I can tell you. I've never seen somebody sit and read texts that weren't even from his courses.
But for decades, I have written down every book I've read. 4 decades on this. My goal is 60 a year. I'm currently at 51 for this year.
Well, pick it up, will you?
I know it's not good enough. You need to keep going.
Get off this stupid channel with Brian and go read. Do something for yourself.
And like Ryan, I do a bit of writing as well. Ryan, you were supposed to be working on a chess biography. You still doing that?
I'm currently working on a book on past pawns. And it's going to be good. It's going to be good. I know you're the only chess player in the group. It's It's going to be good.
I'm sorry.
I'm really excited to get that out there for people.
I thought you said I was going to argue with you, Brian. I thought you said you and Paul were the only chess players. I've played with a few chess in my time. I mean, actually, one of them was an
you two are the two chess players. We're the chess players.
Yeah.
Okay,
Boy,
Brian.
that's
What
not
about
bad.
you?
Now, this is a great question that you should ask, and I'm going to give Paul a lot of credit. I mean, I had read a few books here and there, but I did not read. My first true novel that I really loved was Brothers Karamazov, and
Great book.
Paul had an effect on me, a great effect on me, because I would see Paul just sitting on that couch, just reading and reading and reading, and I always thought that he was working on his literature classes, but he wasn't. He just enjoyed.
Brian was lifting weights and running.
I was all into the hockey. I was not a serious reader at all, aside from newspapers. So if it wasn't for Paul McGinley, I would not have read anything. Believe me, it was.
What's funny, Brian?
Paul taught me how to read and write, and I'm serious.
Okay,
just from reading his letters.
Right. Here's
Brian,
what.
Go ahead, Dave.
No,
I'm a watered down version of Paul.
No, what you've just said, Brian, is absolutely correct. It doesn't matter when, but if you're exposed to someone who's a reader, you have to decide whether you want to do that or not. And anybody out there who wants to know, and I've taught a few.
Yeah.
I've taught a few years, so I do know a little bit about education, a little bit. And I will tell you this: the easiest way to do 3 or 4 things is begin reading to your child. Number one, that creates a bond that will never go away. Now, some parents can't do it or whatever, but that's one. Number two, it should engender in that young person, before they can even read themselves, a desire to want to read. And I've seen it with there's a lot of little kids here in the apartment, and the one is next door, and she's kind of become an adopted granddaughter of ours, and she wants to be able to read that book because mommy can read it, right? She's already on that road. Then you get the added benefit of, and Paul, you were talking about this earlier, about the idea of technical education versus, and unfortunately colleges have become technical education, okay?
They
a lot. They have a high level, but that, and so.
Because you want an immediate financial payoff, Dave, that's why.
Absolutely. No, I mean, I
they're not going to
understand
spend
that.
all these bucks without,
Right. But
having a good chance to get work.
And just to show it is economic in nature, think about this. I said before, I was very fortunate. I got to do my dream, which was to spend time in Cuba. That's what I wanted to do from when I was a kid. And down there, 2 professions that the parents want their kids to go into. One is art and the other is music. The complete opposite of here. Why? Because art and music, you can sell to the tourists at any price you set. They're not governmental priced. And of course, they take a large chunk out of taxes, but if you make more, you do that. But the other thing would be that math is important, don't get me wrong. Everything that's taught in school is important. But if you can't read, you can't think. You can't. And this is where you come into school. And it's been going on for a while, Paul. You said, so it's not just yesterday. I can remember my mom, she taught until she was 70, and they forced her out. She was still fighting out the door. She said, I got another 10 years. She didn't. She died at 77. But yeah, back then, New Jersey had a law. You had to leave at 70 or she still would have been there. And she talked about the difficulty. So this would have been, she was last teaching in the late 70s. And she was just talking about how difficult it was to get kids to read then. So, it's nothing new. Now, I was really the opposite. And I think a lot of that had to be, not that everybody wants to be an only child. I liked being an only child. I really do. And I did. But one of the things I did was read. And I didn't realize at the time how much it was helping. But when I got to school, I didn't have to read. I mean, I read quickly. I have good, and it's all just practice. Anybody could do it. If you didn't have brain damage, I'm not being smart. Another thing, my roommate from college passed away a few weeks ago, and so I've been thinking about him, a lot. And we learned to write the way Brian, you watched Paul.
From Paul's letters. That's how I learned to write.
Well, how I learned to write was basically. Well, I'd written for school newspaper and stuff, but when I really talk about writing, was really the spark. Steve and I lived off campus because we'd applied so late, And so there were just the two of us, and we were 4 miles from campus. So when we got home, we were home. We're not going to, we hitchhiked. That's how we got to school every day. And so we had a couple classes together. And so we started analyzing our own writing and breaking it down. And so again, it was this idea of something greater than school doing it. We also, in defense, and I thought we're talking about Steve, we stopped at 9:30, and we would partake of whatever medicinal substances we had that were illegal at the time. And we would watch usually just an hour of TV. And back then, I don't know if any of you guys, you're young guys, but anybody remember Marcus Welby, the show?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Marcus Welby was a doctor show, Ryan. So what it was. And do you know that if you get stoned enough and you watch a doctor show, you get the actual disease that they're doing that night? I think I had every disease known to man, and it didn't help because Goofy Steve's doing the other thing, which is also something else. You have to. But here's the funny thing: we both ended up as writers, and we never really thought about it. Paul, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you an assignment because you are very bright and you're really good and thoughtful, and you ask good questions. I want you to solve the educational crisis by next Thursday. Okay, you brought it up. It's your baby now.
Trump is not the answer.
Well, you know what it is? He's the anti-answer.
Not within his agenda.
Here's what's going to happen.
Something, Dave, about Paul, so we get a better understanding of when I say that I learned to read from Paul. My father was the type, he always would buy me books for Hanukkah, but he would buy the sports books. I was always reading in that sense, but it was always about sports and this, that, but it wasn't serious reading. What I got from Paul was, I'm not even talking about the writing, just talking about the reading, that Paul was always, searching for a deeper meaning, what was this person saying? And it's from that it went to a different level. And then I realized that it wasn't just something factual that I'm reading, or reading about, Jim Brown, as a running back. There was going to be more to it. And there was things like irony and whatnot that I had to pay attention to that I didn't pay attention to before.
Well, I don't know if this happens in your lives, but it's funny, sometimes a theme emerges. And I spent quite a bit of time doing research in libraries. And we have one that's in walking distance, so that's very nice. And there were 3 or 4 of us in there the other day, and I was working on this idea that we were shaped by a number of things, but I said to them, they were all readers, I said, can you pick 2 books that's not so much that it even spoke to you now, but you see now as you reflect back, had the greatest impact on your life? And I said, and if it's the Bible, it's the Bible. It's fine. There's no limitation here. The only limitation is you have to have read the whole book. And so they said, well, you go first. And I said, well, I've given a little bit of thought. I actually have come up with that. One is a nonfiction book, and that would be A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle. It came out in 1962. I was 10 years old. I don't think I read it the day it came out, but I read it very after that. And the themes that are there are still the themes that I'm interested in. It's a political book. It's what's good and what's evil. It's a censored book. That goes on. But the other one was a nonfiction book that came out in 57. Now, I didn't read it in 57 because I was 5. But it was called Stranger Than Science. And it was just a collection of, and Frank Edwards was this guy who picked all these weird things and wrote about them, like the Loch Ness Monster, all these things. And he said on the front cover, and every word is true. And there was a story in there about this guy named David Lang. It was the first story. It just impacted me. Basically, your state, Kentucky, I don't want to scare you, Ryan, but your state, Kentucky, he goes out, his family's watching, go out to the field, all of a sudden he disappears, gone. They bring the neighbors in, they search for him, nothing. A judge was there, and so he kind of verified that, what's true. And then in this story, 1 year later, and it was really a great ending. Really powerful ending to the story, the way he wrote it. It says, and his 2 sons, I'll make up their names, Elijah and Ryan, heard their father's voice, and he called, and he called, and then he faded away into nothingness. And I thought, wow. Well, that story's fake. Almost all the stories in the book were fake, but the idea was that it gave me this fascination. And so I look back on it. So I was saying before, the joys of reading, but it also makes you who you are. It really,
right. But there's the danger, Dave. When I'm getting back to that idea of, does the reader understand what the writer's saying? I think again, it was Gore Vidal, who said something about Mark Twain, where even in his time, like Huck Finn, they couldn't really understand, what he's really saying about society.
Well,
and that
Brian, how many kids have you taught, Brian, over the years? Roughly, give me a round number.
Okay, I'd say maybe 30,000 total.
Okay, 30,000 kids. How many of them?
Or
how
at
many?
least been in contact with 30,000. I can't say 30,000 in the classroom, but if it's in the classroom, you're up above 10,000 maybe.
And I'm going to predict and say, even though we did have a couple of the same students,
right,
but not many. Out of that 30,000, less than 1% knew how to really read.
Right, but I'm saying is look at Twain. He had to, do almost like stand-up comedy with the quips and all that kind of stuff to try.
Well,
that's where he got his clientele.
But also,
he
no.
do it with
but you got to remember when you're talking about Twain and you're talking about Swift, you're talking about satire, and that's a whole different thing. Colbert made a career when he was, on Comedy Central. And do you know there was a percentage? I think I read somewhere almost like 20% of the people who watched Colbert watched it because they thought he was real. He wasn't playing a character. Satire gets over the head of most people, and they get mad at it too. Like Jonathan Swift says, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to raise more babies because we'll eat the babies because we don't have the potatoes. That's what he says, in essence. And they miss the fact a lot of people go, that's horrible. Kill Jonathan Swift had death threats in his day. Same with satirists now. Look at your boy Lenny. Look at Lenny Bruce.
Do you think Michael Moore, who is today's a satirist today, do you think he has a lot of following? I mean,
Michael Moore.
Michael Moore,
the film he does, that's for sure.
Yeah,
he does right, and there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, maybe the films are more, but he's probably one of our best satirists today. Wouldn't you agree? I mean,
I think what he does is brilliant. I think sometimes, and again, Brian and I argue over this. I think that the person that Brian spends his Friday nights with, which is who, Brian, usually.
Well, Friday
who do you
night,
spend your
wife.
No, you watch something. Who do you watch
on Friday nights?
Isn't he on Friday night?
Bill Maher. I watch Bill Maher.
Jesus God.
Okay. Well, I'm
what are you? Are you like Robert F. Kennedy? Do you have a brain worm too?
Look, I'm just on a different lane here. Okay, but I'm saying I don't watch Maher as much now. I turned it off on Friday.
Yeah. No, but
are any of you familiar with The Boys, the show The Boys?
Yes. And
I think
Brian,
that's a perfect example.
I would agree. Ryan, would you do me a favor? Judy really appreciates that you offered to teach her chess. Now, first of all, I want to see that because she will break you. She will. Trust me. I've seen her now. But the other thing is, she watched 2 episodes and wouldn't watch it. And I said, "What is right now?" So would you send a note to her and just tell her that you'll only help her with chess if she watches The Boys? That might help.
Well, I actually have not watched The Boys personally, but I know what it's about, and I know it's basically, for anyone who doesn't know, it's basically a show about Superman and some other people, but Superman is controlled by greedy corporations, and so he won't save people if it isn't good for the company, for example. And the thing that is so interesting about the show is the demographics of who watch it. Like, you have people across the whole political spectrum who watch it. Democrats watch it, or liberals in general watch it, because they feel like Homelander represents MAGA and all these people. He does some horrible stuff. But then all the MAGA people watch it because they think the Homelander guy is cool and he's awesome.
Right.
And the writers have basically said that he's not supposed to be awesome, but they're idolizing him.
No, he's not.
And the most recent season was they made Homelander. Homelander is the Superman guy. They made him extremely brutal, like way more than the previous seasons. And then a lot of the MAGA people are like, "Well, I don't really like how mean they've made him." But it's like he's been mean the whole show, the whole time. He's been this horrible person. But yeah.
Well, and if you really want to talk about it, books did not lead us to Donald Trump. No. Reality TV. No. Reality TV led us to Donald Trump. And the problem is, and I'm sure you've had these conversations, and I'm sure before this this Trump thing came down the gold escalator in 2016 or 2015, actually. 2 things make me think of this. I still do love professional wrestling. I do. It's one of the few things. Trump doesn't love it. He loves what it can do for him. I love it because it's fake. Makes no pretensions of not being fake. You know, it is fake.
Shit.
What?
I never knew that.
I know you didn't know that. But anyway, we could do 5-hour show on what you don't know. But what is interesting, when I would take Michael when he was little, he liked it too. And invariably, we'd get into 3 or 4 discussions in the night about people sitting there and swore it was real. Swore it was real. Well, it's the same thing with reality TV. That's not real. It's more scripted than some actual scripted shows. They don't just set it. They don't just. But people say, and to support that, there is no Donald Trump as president if there is no show called The Apprentice. There's no Apprentice if there wasn't reality TV. And do any of you 3 gentlemen know? And I wouldn't expect you. When I do this, guys, I do it with Brian. I don't expect the answer. I mean, it's not to make anybody. It's to show how little we all know, or how many things are hidden. Anybody know why the proliferation of reality TV?
Well, it gets ratings.
I don't watch any of it, so I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I've never watched a reality show in my life, but I follow it because of my concerns.
Well, look at what you're seeing on television. I mean, again, I don't know. I'm just saying it's obvious they wouldn't put it there if it wasn't getting ratings.
And why it gets ratings? It's now maybe 50% of TV show. You know, not all the cable. Network,
my guess would be that it's based on emotional reactions and not really thinking
to people in
so
crisis.
It's easy to follow,
right?
And people get caught up in it.
You know how you were saying, Ryan, about the superhero and the boys, being looked at. Well, people, the one in Jersey Shore. I mean, my God, I didn't watch it, but I mean, New Jersey represents it. But here's the thing. Here's how it happened. Is the fact that it cost about 1/10 to make a reality show what a scripted show costs with actors. So here was the thing. They found a way to use it. All of a sudden it took off. It got a life of its own. And now, which would you rather do? I just watched, and I highly recommend it for anybody on HBO, The Penguin, which is, of course, a character that's a nemesis of
Judy,
Batman.
If you can get Amorosa to come on our show, that'd be great. That would be.
I could do that.
I think we get a few more views.
Yeah, we might. But the show is more like The Sopranos. I mean, it's not really a cartoonish thing. But there were, people were upset about that show because it was kind of a thinking show. They wanted the cartoon, and look, I'll go with this every show until somebody can change my mind. There are 2 kinds of people, many kinds of people, but basically 2 kinds of people. Those that pretty much accept authority without question, and those that question everything. I mean, they're really, and I'm in the latter category so much further. And what I would say is, if you belong to a church and believe in God, you have said that I'm the type of person that will accept authority. Now, in your case, if it's really, and you think God's a pretty good guy or whatever, that's okay, but you're still in the authority side. And so you have these people that really want Donald Trump because they think he's the cab driver from Middle East who I talked to in New Orleans. Donald Trump, strong man. He's strong. You see what he do? They no kill him. He's strong in that. He'd be strong for America. I hope you're saying that when they deport you. But anyway, that's
one thing I wanted to just briefly talk, because we were talking about reading and writing and such. My study of Russia pre-1917 was the Russian aristocracy basically controlled the entire country, and the entire country was illiterate. In fact, when they wanted to read, the aristocracy would read the French novelists like Voltaire or whatever. It wasn't until like Derzhavin came in that we had like a decent Russian writer, and then even then it wasn't even great. It wasn't until Pushkin came in.
You did notice that you just said we. Are you collectively now with the Russians? Is that what you're doing?
No. But what I'm trying, I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the communists, of course, when they took over in 17, then everybody was going to learn how to read, and you saw what happened quickly. I mean, as much as it was, a totalitarian state with Stalin, having people giving them the ability to read just changes the economy and change science. And the same thing happened in Cuba. I'm not promoting communism. I'm just saying that if you go from a society where the aristocracy, speaks French, so their nannies, the regular people can't understand them, you've got a big problem there. And this is where I can see where, whether by design or not, if the Republican Party is going to dummy down the education, we're going to be moving into that direction.
And do you know,
greater disparity between those in the know
and
those not.
There's two, in my estimation, there's two reasons why they're going to continue the dumbing down. First is dumb people follow authority, so they're creating more followers. That's what they believe. That's one thing. The second thing is just as bad. What they'll do is they'll make it very difficult for public schools to stay open. They'll go to charter schools. They'll go to homeschooling. And therefore, the idea of public education, back to what you said earlier.
And that will start in the southern states first. We know that.
Well, yeah, of course. It's already started.
Right.
But what happens is, as Paul said, this idea of schools have always kind of been designed as a purpose. And that was one, right, to make good factory workers way back when. But also, it made people Americans. It really was. It was to take immigrants. And now, and you were talking about the literacy rate. And I've looked at it. Cuba's literacy rate, and they're not overinflating it by much, is 98%.
Right.
Of the people, and going down there and seeing it. Books are valuable, et cetera, et cetera. Do you know what the last reading was in the United States?
I don't know, but I imagine it's not 90. Well, maybe, I don't know. It should be 98 or 99, but if you have, are they counting immigrants or whatever?
They're counting anybody who would be a school, the school age.
We have many students even in our school who don't speak English very well, but they do speak Spanish, but they don't write Spanish.
Right. No, it was
Russian thing almost.
It was headed down. It was 79% and headed down. So, fortunately we've stockpiled nuclear weapons, so we don't have to worry about smart Cubans taking us over. But that's going to be really interesting. I was spending some time at the NEA, which is the National Education Association, which Brian, you're a member of,
right.
And then the AFT. They're both here, and they're putting together strike teams to fight back against Trump. And I guess that's my positive thing, Ryan. You were trying to do something positive tonight, and you're right. I mean, it's hard. You really have to look. But there's a group. I'm going to do some more research in it, so don't everybody jump on it yet. I've joined 2 groups already and left one. So I left Twitter because Elon Musk is a creep. He's ruined it.
I did too.
Most of the people there. What I do, though, in all fairness, I do not post. I do lurk because I need that to see what they're doing. And I joined Blue Sky, which is an alternative. I'm searching it out. They're getting 1 million people a day some days. It's become the alternative.
Do you think
it's pretty
conservatives are going to join Blue Sky at all?
Oh, they are. It's actually interesting. The reason they're joining is because they want to own the libs, and they have to go where the libs are.
You know what, Brian? You're absolutely right. Now, what is interesting, though, the difference is Musk protects the right. I think they're. I think we're going to be able to. If you complain, sort of like in Divided We Stand, and we've gotten some. If somebody says something untoward, they're going to bounce them out. So we'll see if Blue Sky does that. Because it's one thing to say you're doing it; it's another when you need millions of dollars a day.
Is that
to do
mainly
that.
through Bill Gates, Blue Sky?
I'm sorry.
Is Blue Sky through Bill Gates or no? I'm not sure.
No. It's the same guy, Jack. What's his last name? Who did Twitter?
Yeah, the guy who made Twitter. He sold it to Elon Musk and has taken the money, and he's made Blue Sky.
Okay, cool.
And so it follows the
Everybody's
Twitter.
leaving Twitter. It's just it's like.
Well, the other one, and I would suggest maybe you 3 start, and then before we endorse it, a friend of mine, Texas, she's very, very radical. She's a member of our group. She said, "Are you familiar with Blue Res?" And I said, "No, I'm not." She said, "Oh, you really should join. It's a Divided We Stand on steroids." It really is interesting. They're doing very much what we're doing, but you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people on there, and I've been really impressed with that so far. I've just done it 3 days, so I'll report back. But as I think they come up with really good questions. And then you can write, and then they have open thread like Monday, and you can write you write anything in a running thing, responding back and forth. So it has some really creative ideas, and they're doing just what we're doing. But when you start with that many people, you have more. So I'm going to write this week. I'm going to write to the founder and see. I have a theory why we haven't grown so much. I think, Brian, I hate to say this, but I think it's your communist Russian ties that I think keep this network from exploding. Because real Americans like Ryan and Paul.
No, it's our. Truthfully speaking, now it's our demographics. Most people are baby boomers, and we're going to be working on that. I have a couple ideas. Finally.
Oh Lord, that's dangerous. Oh my God.
Okay. I know that. But listen, we are out of time, gentlemen, tonight. So maybe we can continue this on another program.
I'd like to ask Ryan a quick question. Ryan, you familiar with Wendell Berry from Kentucky?
Yeah.
Is he still alive?
I think that he is still alive.
One of America's greatest writers, folks, is Wendell Berry from Kentucky.
Yeah. Let's see. Is Wendell Berry still alive?
He's got to be.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's still alive. He's 90. Yeah, he's still alive.
Wow.
He's not. Yeah, he's older, but yeah, no, he is. Him and Barbara Kingsolver are the two big authors from Kentucky that a lot.
I didn't know Barbara Kingsolver was from Kentucky. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Kentucky's producing some writers, folks. It's not all Mitch McConnell.
Oh, the best writer, the best nonfiction writer of all time, possibly, Mr. Hunter Thompson, spent some time there. So Kentucky. Well, I know we're running out of time, but I'll just make the statement. A lot of great writers come from the South, and I think it's because they're outsiders to begin with, right?
Yes, they realize where am I, and they start writing.
And so they start. They say, think about this. I'll leave everyone with this thought. One of the reasons that sometimes, and we're all guilty of this, we don't think enough, or we don't write, or we don't, we're not doing what the mental production things, is because we're comfortable. And so, most writers, if you go back and look at them, or most thinkers, they were outsiders. They were outsiders. If you fit in, right? And I see it in our own family. Owen, our grandson, fits in. He's an athlete. He's a really good athlete. He was likable till he became a teenager. Now I'm not so sure. But our granddaughter, Audrey, just doesn't fit in the South. And she's accepted that, and she's doing some great thought work, and she's writing, and she's reading, and she's baking, and she's doing art. So if nothing else, maybe that's one of the, and they do more than that, but that is something. If you go back and look at the number of great Southern writers, Faulkner.
We'll have to do a show.
Great Southern tradition. Yeah, still exists.
Yeah, Southern Gothic.
Carson McCullers, Flannery O'Connor.
Oh yeah.
Just tons of them. Obviously, Faulkner's the big name. Shirley Jackson. All kinds.
John
Absolutely,
Kennedy,
I agree with you on that. Great. William Styron.
Oh yeah.
All right, gentlemen, I hate to cut us off, but I do have to cut us off. This is a hard cutoff here. Can we continue this conversation next time?
Sure. I'd like to suggest that we eliminate one member. I'll tell you who that is.
Okay.
I'll tell you that
Gentlemen,
later.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Ryan. And even thank you, Dave. Okay.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Have a good week.